I'd say that John was my mentor more than anyone. Everything that I was later to accomplish in law, such as it is, I attribute to John. He was like a giant brother and also a father figure of sorts. And I always felt that he was extremely kind to me and very considerate and very patient with me. And the thing that I liked the most about John from a legal standpoint was that he would correct whatever you did, but he would talk to you about it. And I think that's really important. When you correct an associate, the associate needs to understand not just simply the language that has been corrected, but why it was corrected, what the associate didn't see when he went through it. And if we don't do that, then obviously we don't pass along the things that we've had the experience to learn.
John was a wonderful mentor. He was very thoughtful and generous in getting me involved in a number of transactions early in my career, mostly real estate, but a variety of things that he was taking on. John was wonderful to me in getting me involved in those transactions, and it was not only learning about real estate and the transactions he was working in, but to see the way John assembled groups of lawyers to work on a project and delegated work to him, worked with the client, and worked with other lawyers. Just observing that was a wonderful learning experience for me. I owe a lot to John in that regard.
The lawyer I spent the most time with was John Mee, who was our firm's primary contact with then our largest client, the Fleming Companies, which was a national wholesale food distributor. They were engaged in the early 1980s in a very, very aggressive campaign of growth. And I began to work on a team with John, and I learned how to do mergers and acquisitions and how to buy businesses and how to sell businesses. And I learned an awful lot about the wholesale and retail grocery business. 70 or 80% of my time in a year might have been working with Fleming Foods. So I did a lot of work with John Mee, and he taught me a lot about being careful, and he taught me about the importance of proofreading. John believed that every mistake was the biggest mistake that could have been made. I think I've softened my approach about things like an occasional typo, but you learned the importance of every word mattering. And if a word didn't matter, then don't use it. Don't use it when you're drafting a contract.
John Mee was the organizer. I mean, he was always fairly straight-laced and straight in his position. He was very demanding in the work. John would call people into his office and go from person to person, ask them in his office, tell me about what your part of the transaction is like, where you are with real estate, where you are with franchising, where you are in the corporate due diligence, where you are with the negotiations, where you are with the drafting of the contracts. But John was a master at putting together an entire overall plan for a particular transaction or working with a client. He was wonderful to work with.
John Mee would always be the one that would stand up at our firm parties to welcome everybody, including spouses and others. And that was important to him, I could tell, because of the experience he had with the prior leaders in there. And he wanted McAfee Taft to be a family. And it was important that he reflected that, not only in what he said, but what he did. All of that couldn't overshadow the fact that he was just a phenomenal lawyer in charge of Fleming Companies and others, but Fleming Companies who represented a large percentage of our business for a long time. And that burden, as I've gotten older and reflected back, had to be great, but he embraced it because he knew he could provide the services that they needed, but more importantly, he could help others within the firm by taking care of such a wonderful client. So he was kind of a father figure to a lot of attorneys, the younger attorneys that were in here, and I think he embraced that role, and we were extremely blessed to have John as one of our leaders during a very trying time in Oklahoma But because of his leadership, Ted's leadership and Gary's leadership, our firm is where it is today, and so much of the credit belongs to those three.